As agreed, I'll arrange a new identity for you to leave and give you a sum of money. Are you sure you want to go? Jiang Yuan looked at the photos of her husband entangled with another woman, her heart already plunged into an icy sea. I'm sure. After a moment of silence, the person on the phone said, "All right. But don't be too heartbroken. Your husband and my wife getting together is just two scoundrels colluding, at worst. We who've been abandoned can pair up and infuriate that despicable couple." By evening, Jiang Yuan, as usual, prepared a table of dishes tailored to Lu Xian's taste. She lit the candles and waited for her husband to return home from work. She waited from 7 in the evening until 10 at night. The gate showed no sign of movement, and the outside remained eerily quiet. Jiang Yuan took out her phone to check the time, scrolled through her contacts, and hesitated for a moment with her finger hovering over the word husband. Ultimately, she swiped past it and dialed the company's security office instead. "Is President Lu still working overtime in the office? I didn't want to disturb him, so I ordered some late-night snacks. Could you please deliver them to him later?" The security guard recognized her voice and replied respectfully, "President Jiang, President Lu left 2 hours ago. He probably had a business engagement." Jiang Yuan responded with an indifferent "oh," and said, "All right, thank you." For the rest of the night, Jiang Yuan kept staring at her phone but didn't receive any messages from Lu Xiang. In the past, he would always inform her in advance if he had a business engagement. Tonight was unusual. Probably because, "The person accompanying me right now is very important." Jiang Yuan looked at the table full of cold dishes. Expressionless, she stood up, dumped all the food into the trash, cleaned up, and then went upstairs to sleep. As for Lu Xiang, he didn't return all night. Early the next morning, Jiang Yuan heard the sound of an engine in the yard. Instinctively, she got out of bed, threw a shawl over her pajamas, and hurried downstairs. The man happened to come in through the door just then. She went to greet him, opened the shoe cabinet, took out a pair of men's slippers, and placed them on the floor. "Did you work all night yesterday? You've got dark circles under your eyes." Lu Xiang gave a casual hum in response, changed his shoes, and then turned around naturally. Jiang Yuan helped him take off his coat. "Go take a shower first and get some proper sleep." Shen Xiang was already accustomed to her meticulous care. Jiang Yuan thought he would head straight upstairs. But today was different. The man stood still, his gaze lingering on her face with a complicated expression. Jiang Yuan held his coat in her arms, touching her own face in confusion. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." The man averted his gaze. "I'll tell you later." Jiang Yuan had a certain premonition in her heart and said with a smile, "Okay." It seemed many things didn't require her to break the ice first. Sure enough, half an hour later, Shen Xiang placed a divorce agreement on the table. "I'm sorry, she's back. You can make any requests, and I'll try my best to fulfill them." Of course, Jiang Yuan knew exactly who this she referred to, Xu Chenyang, Lu Xian's childhood sweetheart. The two grew up together since childhood. Lu Xiang practically held this girl in the palm of his hand. Even if Xu Chenyang wanted the moon from the sky, he would probably find a way to get it for her. However, this childhood sweetheart couple only made it to high school. Xu Chenyang went abroad for love, leaving Lu Xiang alone in the country. He suffered for a long time and couldn't move on. Seeing her lower her eyes and remain silent, Lu Xiang thought the news had dealt her a heavy blow. He said solemnly, "Don't worry, it will take a month to get the divorce certificate. During this month, I'll come home as usual to give you time to adjust." Jiang Yuan took a deep breath, clenched her fingers, and then picked up the pen to sign her name on the divorce agreement. Lu Xiang looked at her slightly trembling hands, seeming somewhat reluctant to see her in such a state. He pressed his lips together, ultimately saying nothing, and took the agreement to the study. Jiang Yuan watched the man's retreating figure. He hadn't taken 2 steps before picking up his phone to send a message, apparently texting someone with a relaxed and cheerful smile on his lips. She averted her gaze, picked up her phone, and dialed Fu Zhon's number once again. "He mentioned divorce to me. Let's proceed as you suggested. Give me a new identity. I'm going to Beicheng." Fu Zhon chuckled. "Going that far, if we're ending it, we should make a clean break, shouldn't we? If you can't hold on to the sand, better to let it scatter." After hanging up the phone, Jiang Yuan felt as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She opened her memo app and set a countdown for the divorce. A month later, she could take the money from both Lu Xiang and Fu Zhon, leave this place, and start a carefree new life as a wealthy woman. Chapter 2. Since she had already decided to divorce, Jiang Yuan certainly wouldn't stay at the company any longer. Ms. Lu had also poured a great deal of her heart and soul into it, and before leaving, she wanted to ensure a thorough and complete handover. She and Lu Xiang left one after the other, heading straight to the company. There, she quickly organized the tasks at hand, expediting whatever she could resolve. One document required Lu Xian's personal signature. Jiang Yuan, adhering strictly to protocol, took the file to the CEO's office, just as she raised her hand to knock. The door in front of her opened first from the inside. The woman was dressed in an exquisite Chanel suit, holding a coffee cup in her hand. Upon seeing her, Xu Chenyang widened her eyes in surprise, then smiled apologetically and said, "Oh, it's Jiang Yuan, look at me, I've been back for so many days, only focused on accompanying A Yang, and completely forgot you also work at the company. Did I startle you? Sorry for not telling you in advance." But even if she hadn't mentioned it, Jiang Yuan would have known immediately. On the day Xu Chenyang returned, Lu Xiang booked out the entire club to host a welcome banquet for her, even creating a massive heart-shaped rose display at the entrance. Everyone in their circle of friends couldn't help but feel envious, and photos and videos flooded social media, making it impossible for Jiang Yuan not to know. It was also at that moment she realized she could never replace Xu Chenyan's place in Lu Xian's heart. Fortunately, this absurd marriage was about to come to an end. Jiang Yuan smiled faintly. "It's fine, knowing now isn't too late. Are you looking for A Yang?" Xu Chenyang took a step forward, leaning closer to Jiang Yuan, and blinked as she said, "He's probably not available right now. If you have something to tell him, you can let me know, and I'll pass it on for you." The suggestive tone unmistakably conveyed to Jiang Yuan just how intimate their relationship was and what they had just been doing. Jiang Yuan remained expressionless. "If it's inconvenient for him to discuss work matters now, I can come back later." With that, she turned to leave. "Wait." Xu Chenyang suddenly reached out to stop her, but somehow stumbled. The coffee cup fell to the ground, shattering into pieces, and the remaining coffee spilled all over Xu Chenyang. Jiang Yuan, she was at a loss, looking at her soiled clothes as her eyes quickly reddened. "If you're unhappy, you can just say it. I considered you a friend and only wanted to invite you to dinner. How could you?" Before she could finish, a figure emerged from the office. Lu Xiang took in Xu Chenyan's disheveled state and said sternly to Jiang Yuan, "Jiang Yuan, if you have any grievances, take them out on me. What's the point of bullying Yang Yang?" Bullying? He didn't even bother to ask before making such a definition. Jiang Yuan felt her heart sting as she met the sharp gaze in those eyes, but it was almost over anyway, so there was no point in minding. She said calmly. Miss Xu was careless herself. "Yes, Ayang." Xu Chenyang grabbed Lu Xian's arm, as if afraid he might clash with Jiang Yuan, biting her lip and whispering softly, "It was my own carelessness. Don't blame Jiang Yuan." Her words only made Lu Xian's gaze at Jiang Yuan grow even darker. "Jiang Yuan, don't exhaust the last bit of affection I have for you. Go back where you came from, and don't come see me again until you've figured things out." After saying this, he heartbrokenly led Xu Chenyang into the office, slamming the door shut with a loud bang and locking it from the inside. Jiang Yuan stood there for a moment, finding it somewhat amusing. "Come see him again after you've figured it out, of course." "I've figured it out." Her feelings for Lu Xiang had already been exhausted. Chapter 3. Jiang Yuan sighed as she looked at the documents in her hand, thinking she would have to return to the office first and come back later. However, to everyone's surprise, it wasn't long before she saw Xu Chenyang again in the break room. Xu Chenyang had changed into a new outfit, a latest Dior suit set, equally exquisite and undoubtedly expensive. She greeted Jiang Yuan as if nothing had happened. "Jiang Yuan, don't you have an assistant? Why are you making coffee yourself?" Jiang Yuan hummed in response and casually threw the question back at her. "Miss Xu, are you the assistant? Why is there always so much coffee to make?" You, Xu Chenyang was stunned and momentarily at a loss for words. When she finally figured out how to say it, Jiang Yuan interrupted her without much emotion. Miss Xu, there's no need to pretend in front of me. I want to say you don't have to target me. I'm not your enemy. Lu Xiang should have told her about the divorce as soon as possible. Xu Chenyang was taken aback, then replied with a faint smile, I don't see you as an enemy either. A woman like you, with no family background, orphaned at a young age, it's a miracle you didn't starve to death. You two are simply not from the same world. Take the clothes I'm wearing for example. He knows exactly what to order for me without me even saying a word. Every piece is a limited edition worth tens of thousands. As for what you're wearing, to him, it's no different from trash. Xu Chenyang crossed her arms, not bothering to hide her disdain. The clothes are trash, and so are you. He's just momentarily intrigued. You mean nothing to him. Jiang Yuan had no interest in luxury goods, nor did these words stir any emotion in her. But being insulted to her face was no reason to swallow her pride. She stared at Xu Chenyang for a long moment before replying. So, to Fu Zhon, you were just a passing fancy too. No wonder Miss Xu can empathize with me so much. You, Xu Chenyang's face flushed red and then turned pale, but in the end, she couldn't muster any words of rebuttal. With a final I'm nothing like you, she picked up her coffee and left. But Jiang Yuan felt that this might make the other person resent her even more. She couldn't help but feel a bit annoyed. There was no need to care about such petty arguments. Jiang Yuan was once a wealthy young lady, but at the age of 15, her family suddenly fell into ruin. Both her parents committed suicide, leaving her alone in the world with no one to rely on. Fu Zhon appeared at that very moment. If it weren't for Fu Zhon continuing her life, she might not have survived. So when Fu Zhon later came to her for help, she didn't refuse. Recently, there's a woman who's been flirting with me. I quite like her, but she might just be clinging to me out of novelty and a desire to conquer. If she becomes my woman, I can't stand by and watch her wanting everything. There's a persistent man always following her around. It's annoying. Go and win him over. Wait until Xu Chenyang completely cuts ties with him. Then you can withdraw, whatever you want at that time. I'll promise you. Fu Zhon had shown immense kindness to Jiang Yuan, and even without his final words, she would have done anything for his happiness. Little did she expect that her pursuit of Lu Xiang would last 7 long years. At first, Lu Xiang was utterly repelled by her, but Jiang Yuan remained relentless, attending to every detail with meticulous care. Though she failed to move Lu Xiang, she ended up moving herself first. Jiang Yuan felt she had truly fallen in love with this man. Finally, on the day Xu Chenyang went abroad, Lu Xiang got drunk and cornered her at the private room entrance, his scorching breath carrying an aggressive edge. Jiang Yuan, since you like me so much, stay by my side forever from now on. That night, they slept together for the first time. Fu Zhon warned her, Jiang Yuan, don't get your eyes pecked while playing with eagles. Jiang Yuan confidently assured that she could win Lu Xian's heart back from Xu Chenyang, which led to the bet with Fu Zhon. Now it seems she not only lost, but lost completely. She admits it. Jiang Yuan didn't know when Xu Chenyang left the company. At 3 p.m., just as she was about to start a department meeting, Lu Xiang stormed into the office angrily. Jiang Yuan, I've already said I'll try to compensate you. Why do you keep provoking Yang Yang? Jiang Yuan immediately knew that the young mistress had gone to complain again. What did she tell you? Lu Xiang was slightly taken aback. What? I said, what did Miss Xu tell you? Jiang Yuan was busy with a summary meeting and had no mood to argue with him. No matter what she said, it's my fault. Apologize to her for me, and please ask her to stay away from me in the future. Lu Xiang had never seen this side of Jiang Yuan before. He thought she was still angry about the divorce and had given up on everything. He reached out and grabbed the woman who was about to leave, his gaze complex and fixed on her face. Jiang Yuan, I know I've wronged you, but can you not be like this? Jiang Yuan tried to break free from his grip but failed, so she simply let him hold her. What about me? You? Lu Xian's brows furrowed tightly, and after a long pause, he finally spoke in a deep voice. The divorce procedures are already underway. Even if you disagree, it's too late now. Don't do those meaningless things. Chapter 4. Jiang Yuan really wanted to tell him that she didn't disagree, nor was it too late. In fact, she even wished time would speed up so she could leave this troublesome place as soon as possible. But Lu Xiang didn't give her this chance. After delivering his harsh words, he hurried off to comfort his sweetheart. Jiang Yuan was perfectly content, pouring all her energy into her work. For several days in a row, she left early and returned late, staying in the guest room at night without crossing paths with Lu Xiang or even caring whether he had come home. Finally, after handling all the work at hand, Jiang Yuan submitted her resignation to the HR department. Ms. Chen from HR looked a bit hesitant. Director Jiang, shouldn't you have Director Lu sign this first? Signatures again. Jiang Yuan recalled the last document. It was ultimately Liu Wei, Shun Xian's assistant, who took it to him for signing. But this time, it's a resignation letter. Surely Lu Xiang would be more straightforward about it, right? Jiang Yuan thought it over and over, and finally decided to follow suit. When the resignation letter was handed to Liu Wei, he couldn't hide his surprise. Although President Liu now has Miss Xu by his side, after all, President Jiang is his legitimate wife. Are you really resigning? Liu Wei's expression showed not only sympathy for Jiang Yuan but also regret for losing a colleague. With you gone, President Liu will be losing his right-hand man. Jiang Yuan shook her head and told him, President Liu already knows I'm leaving. Give it to him, he'll sign it. After the divorce, she had no reason to stay here any longer. Since Jiang Yuan had said so, Liu Wei had no choice but to take the resignation letter to Lu Xiang. At that moment, Lu Xiang was on the phone with Xu Chenyang, discussing where to go for dinner that evening. He glanced at Liu Wei and motioned for him to bring the document over. Liu Wei handed it over, watching as his boss signed the name without the slightest hesitation, even while speaking softly. He said, well, out with the old, in with the new. If it's not suitable, don't force it. Liu Wei thought to himself, it seems President Liu has truly made up his mind. He didn't ask any more questions, picked up the signed documents, and left the office. Jiang Yuan wasted no time in submitting her resignation to HR and completing all the handover procedures. As she walked out of the building carrying a box, she took several deep breaths. Feeling that she was finally about to embrace freedom and bid a permanent farewell to those humiliating days, Lu Xiang was unaware of all this. He only felt that the office was eerily quiet. The woman who used to frequently drop by with things to show concern had been completely silent these past few days. Jiang Yuan used to almost consider herself a nutritionist. In her spare time, she would brew health teas and make fruit salads, since Lu Xiang had a sensitive stomach. She would occasionally even bake soft bread in the pantry. That afternoon, after having hot pot with Xu Chenyang, Lu Xian's stomach was burning with pain. Suddenly, he craved the white fungus soup Jiang Yuan used to make. He dialed the internal line and called Liu Wei over. Where's my wife? Liu Wei was taken aback. His wife? Didn't she already leave this morning? Before he could respond, Lu Xiang pinched the bridge of his nose and said, never mind. Go tell her I'll have dinner with her tonight. He had brought up divorce. Jiang Yuan must be feeling upset. Though she was usually composed, she wasn't above throwing tantrums at times. Lu Xiang thought to himself that he had indeed spent quite a bit of time with Yang Yang these past few days. Since he had promised to give their relationship another month, he should also take care of Jiang Yuan's feelings. Liu Wei, seeing that he seemed to have genuinely forgotten, finally couldn't hold back and spoke up. President Liu, President Jiang has already handed over all her work and officially resigned. Lu Xiang abruptly looked up. What did you say? The cold intensity in his eyes made Liu Wei's heart tighten, but he pressed on. I gave you President Jiang's resignation letter to sign yesterday. She said you knew about it. His voice grew fainter, and Lu Xiang didn't continue listening. He didn't know where his anger came from. But he grabbed his coat from the back of the chair and strode out of the office. He sped all the way home, screeching to a halt in the yard. Lu Xiang closed his eyes, suppressing his restless mood. Jiang Yuan used to express her dissatisfaction directly when she was upset with him, regardless of whether he cared or not. And everything would continue as usual. This time, she actually showed some backbone. She even resigned outright. Was she so sure he would go and coax her? Lu Xian's gaze was heavy as he pushed open the car door and stepped out. However, the moment he entered, the scene before him made him forget all his emotions. Feeling only a surge of blood rushing to his head, he blurted out, "What are you doing?" Jiang Yuan hadn't expected him to return at this moment. She glanced up briefly before handing the booklet in her hand to the bewildered aunt beside her. "You all continue organizing. I need to have a word with Mr. Lu." Lu Xiang frowned at the scattered items on the floor, all gifts he had occasionally given Jiang Yuan over the years when he was in a good mood. There were also some couple items she insisted on buying when they went out together. At that time, they didn't know Xu Chenyang would come back. So Lu Xiang often indulged her. Couple laptops, shoes, hats, suitcases. Jiang Yuan, like any ordinary young couple, loved collecting those impractical things. But after buying them, Lu Xiang never touched them. He was used to the old one. The old laptop had been with him for many years. It was a high school graduation gift from Xu Chenyang. But not using it didn't mean he didn't want it anymore. Lu Xiang looked at the scattered items on the floor, memories flooding back, and said coldly, "Jiang Yuan, don't you think you owe me an explanation?" "Explanation for what? I just donated things I don't usually need. No big deal." Jiang Yuan paused, then said with a hint of teasing, "You never even glanced at them before. Don't tell me you're suddenly reluctant to part with these little things now." Mr. Lu, once indifferent, now pretending to care. Jiang Yuan suddenly remembered the notebook Lu Xiang had been using for years, still well preserved after a decade. Because it was a gift from Xu Chenyang. Love and indifference are truly so obvious. Lu Xiang was left speechless, a stifled breath stuck in his chest, neither rising nor falling. After a long pause, his voice turned cold as he asked, "Then what's this about resigning? We had an agreement." Jiang Yuan, "At most, Yang Yang just said a few words. She didn't even hold it against you. Was it really necessary to make such a fuss over something so trivial?" He actually thought she was just throwing a tantrum. Jiang Yuan felt helpless and somewhat amused. She looked directly into Lu Xian's eyes and said word by word, "It has nothing to do with Xu Chenyang. It's because we're already divorced. I don't care what you do with her, nor do I want any connection with you. Shun Xiang, as you wished, I won't love you anymore." Chapter 5. It was rare to see such a blank expression on Shun Xian's face. Perhaps because he had never heard Jiang Yuan say "I don't love you" before, he couldn't accept it for a moment. His jaw muscles trembled slightly as he opened his mouth, but no words came out. After a long moment, his expression finally darkened. "Jiang Yuan, there's no need for you to say such meaningless things. Yang Yang won't disturb you. I've already said I'll stay by your side this whole month, giving you time to slowly move on. Why must you deceive yourself?" He still didn't believe it. Jiang Yuan really laughed. "So, I should move out, once I finish packing my things. You can even let Xu Chenyang move in. I don't care." Shun Xiang stared at Jiang Yuan without blinking for a while, as if trying to confirm the truth in her words. After a long pause, his Adam's apple moved, and his lowered brows revealed a trace of unconcealed gloom, something even he himself hadn't noticed. "No need. Yang Yang doesn't want to get involved between us. There's no need to keep testing me with such words. What I've decided won't change. There's only Yang Yang in my heart. Instead of doing useless things, you should think about what else you might want. Financially, I can try to compensate you." Jiang Yuan looked at his gloomy expression and found herself at a loss for words. To what extent had she loved him before, that it gave him the illusion she would never leave him? Shun Xiang didn't wait for her to say more. After finishing his piece, he turned and left. Jiang Yuan thought he must be going to find Xu Chenyang again, but it didn't matter. Instead, Shun Xian's words just now reminded her, since this man was being so generous, it would be rude of her not to ask for something. Who would complain about having too much money? That very afternoon, Jiang Yuan selected 2 villas from Shun Xian's numerous properties, worth over 100 million. She then directly entrusted a lawyer to handle the transfer documents, passing them to Liu Wei for Shun Xian's signature. Shun Xiang swiftly signed his name and pressed his fingerprint. Closing the pen cap, he looked up at Liu Wei and asked, "Did she say anything else?" Liu Wei was taken aback. No, she must have run out of options, I suppose. Shen Xiang curled his lips into a faint smile and scoffed, probably read some toxic online advice again, like a man's money shows where his heart lies. Whatever, she's in a bad mood, let her vent. If she brings up any more demands with you later, just agree to them. It's just that Jiang Yuan has really gone too far this time. He needs to let her stew a little longer, otherwise, with over 20 days left, who knows what kind of trouble she might stir up. Liu Wei looked at his boss's expression and hesitated to speak. He really wanted to say that the lady didn't seem to be in a bad mood at all, on the contrary, his face was glowing with health. But then again, he thought, this was a matter between husband and wife, and as an outsider, it wasn't his place to say too much. Liu Wei responded respectfully. Taking the signed documents to hand over to Jiang Yuan immediately listed the 2 villas with a real estate agent. With the requirement to sell them as quickly as possible, the price wasn't important, but the transaction had to be in full payment and completed swiftly. Who would ever complain about having too much money? At the very least, those 2 villas could sell for 100 million. In the evening, Jiang Yuan received a WeChat message from Shen Xiang. The message said he wouldn't be back for the next 2 days, advising her to calm down and not get stuck in a dead end. He suggested they part amicably and remain friends in the future. Jiang Yuan stared at the message for 2 seconds before letting out a light laugh. I never realized before how narcissistic this man could be. Out of sight, out of mind. She hid the chat window and went back to packing. After living in this house for 5 years, there was just too much clutter. Jiang Yuan picked out the important items to pack into boxes, planning to throw everything else away. If she was going to cut ties, she'd do it clean. She wasn't about to leave any traces behind. Shen Xiang hadn't returned for 2 days. Jiang Yuan was calmer than she had imagined. The feelings she thought would be hard to let go of turned out to be just so. Early that morning, just as she finished tearing off the page from the desk calendar, she suddenly received a call from Liu Wei. Liu Wei couldn't reach Shen Xiang, but there was an important contract the company needed to sign, and the partner was pressing hard. Having no other choice, he had to turn to Jiang Yuan for help. Jiang Yuan paused. What about Xu Chenyang? Have you asked her? I've asked. Miss Xu also doesn't know where President Shen is. Jiang Yuan pondered for a while before deciding to go over. Although her relationship with Shen Xiang was over, the company still held her efforts. Not to mention the project Liu Wei mentioned was originally under her responsibility. Jiang Yuan went out and soon drove to the company. The entrance of Shen's office building was right at a large intersection. With cars coming and going, she checked the rearview mirror and turned on the left turn signal. Just as she finished turning the steering wheel twice, a car suddenly rushed from the side and collided head-on with Jiang Yuan's car. The massive collision deployed the airbags. And Jiang Yuan felt like a kite with its string cut. As her head throbbed, she could only watch helplessly as the car lost control and ultimately crashed violently into the green belt. The other car was also severely damaged, with thick smoke billowing out, obscuring the view of anyone inside. Jiang Yuan weakly shook her head and felt something wet on her face. She raised her hand to wipe it. It was blood. Before she could react, a familiar figure suddenly came into view. Jiang Yuan felt some of her fear subside and couldn't wait to push the door open to step out. Yet, as soon as her hand touched the car door, she saw the man rush straight to the vehicle opposite, his face displaying a panic and tension she had never seen before. Yang. He opened the door and carefully, with heartache, lifted the woman inside into his arms. It was Xu Chenyang after all. Jiang Yuan's hand, which had been resting on the car door, slowly slid down. Her chest heaved uncontrollably from sheer panic, and she even forgot about the pain. Her vision was filled only with that face, etched with anxiety. Yang. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have gone drinking without telling you. It's all my fault. Don't fall asleep. I'm taking you to the hospital now. Where's the car? The car. Liu Wei caught up from behind and said urgently, President Shen, we still need to wait for the traffic police to determine the accident. Determine what? I told you to get the car. Shen Xiang roared with fury, his icy gaze sweeping toward Jiang Yuan. Whoever dares to hit Yang, I'll make them pay. No matter who they are. Through the hazy smoke, Jiang Yuan saw the raw violence and murderous intent in his eyes with perfect clarity. She had thought Shun Xiang simply didn't love her anymore. That at least he had once cared. Turns out, there was never any affection at all. In front of Xu Chenyang, he could completely disregard whether she lived or died. Jiang Yuan's lips curled into a self-mocking smile. The wound on her forehead finally registered, sending waves of sharp pain that spread through her nerves to her heart, nearly suffocating her. After a long while, the person opposite her had already left. At that very moment, the phone rang. Jiang Yuan struggled to pick up her phone and answered the call. Fu Zhon. As soon as she spoke, tears uncontrollably streamed down her face. Her soft voice carried a hint of grievance. I've been in a car accident. Could you call an ambulance for me? Fu Zhon was stunned for a moment, then waved to instruct his assistant and turned on the speakerphone. He said in a deep voice, "Don't be afraid, tell me your location, and I'll send someone to pick you up immediately." Jiang Yuan mustered her remaining consciousness and relayed her address and current condition. The assistant immediately went to make arrangements after hearing the details. Fu Zhon frowned deeply, his voice low and restrained as he asked, "So, have you given up now?" Jiang Yuan leaned weakly against the back of the chair. Her shifting gaze took in the chaotic scene around her. With many onlookers snapping photos on their phones, she let out a soft hum and asked, "Can you get me out of here quickly?" The man pondered for a moment before replying deliberately, "Yes, now is the perfect opportunity. I'll make sure you die in this car accident," vanishing completely from Shun Xian's world. Chapter 6. Shun Xiang rushed Xu Chenyang to the hospital in a frantic hurry, personally accompanying her through every examination. Still uneasy, he summoned the most authoritative doctors in the hospital, repeatedly emphasizing that no mistakes were to be made regarding Xu Chenyang. After completing the hospitalization procedures, Liu Wei received a call from the traffic police department. His expression froze momentarily. After responding briefly, he hurried back to the ward. "President Shun. About Madam, why bring her up now?" Shun Xiang frowned deeply, cutting him off without hesitation. "I'll be at the hospital taking care of Yang Yang these 2 days. Keep an eye on the company. And don't contact me unless it's absolutely necessary." As for Jiang Yuan, didn't she already take 2 villas to vent her anger? Besides, Yang Yang was in a car accident. It would be unreasonable if she didn't understand. Thinking of this, Shun Xiang said in a deep voice, "Let's put her matter aside for now. Nothing is more important than Yang Yang." With things having reached this point, Liu Wei had no choice but to swallow the words on the tip of his tongue. It seems President Shun truly doesn't care about his wife. But, forget it, his wife usually treats him well, so he should handle it himself. Shun Xiang stayed in the hospital for 3 days. He initially wanted Jiang Yuan to bring him some clean clothes, but remembering they hadn't spoken for several days, he decided to go back himself. As soon as he entered, the cleaning auntie was busy in the living room. Somehow, Shun Xiang inexplicably felt that this home was empty. He frowned, his gaze sweeping across the upstairs area. "Where's my wife?" The housekeeper was taken aback by the question. "Madam, I don't know, sir. The house has been empty these past 2 days when I came. She hasn't come back." Shun Xian's expression turned cold and somber. Upon reflection, he guessed Jiang Yuan might have found out about him accompanying Yang Yang at the hospital and was throwing another tantrum. She truly couldn't grasp the situation. Since they were already divorced, they would inevitably have to part ways sooner or later. Originally, he had agreed to accompany her for a month out of consideration for their years of marital ties. Did she really think he would change his mind? Shun Xiang took out his phone and dialed Jiang Yuan's number. "Sorry, the number you have dialed is powered off." She even turned it off. An indescribable irritation surged in his heart. Shun Xiang loosened his collar and headed upstairs. The second-floor hallway was originally filled with many potted plants, all collected intermittently by Jiang Yuan, some rare orchids or succulents, even the notoriously difficult-to-grow lilies of the valley. But now, all the shelves were completely empty, not a single leaf remained. Shun Xian's temple throbbed with veins, his sense of foreboding growing stronger by the minute. He strode over and kicked open the door to the master bedroom. The curtains weren't drawn. and bright sunlight spilled across the floor. With each gust of wind, the room seemed even more spacious, quiet, and desolate. Everything was gone. The dressing table no longer held an array of cosmetics, and the bags and jewelry in the closet had all vanished without a trace. It took a long moment for Shun Xiang to exhale a heavy breath from his chest, yet it did nothing to dispel the anger burning in his eyes. He clenched his fingers and scrutinized every corner of the room. The wardrobe, now empty of clothes, the bathroom, only a single toothbrush remains. Even the cabinet that usually held feminine products was completely cleared out. Shun Xiang even began to doubt whether he was dreaming, as everything related to Jiang Yuan had vanished without a trace. He shut his eyes tightly, then opened them again, but nothing had changed. That woman, just left without a word. Where did she go? How dare she? Shun Xiang felt a surge of anger rising within him, threatening to consume his rationality. It's impossible. Jiang Yuan may appear cold, but she loves him to death deep down. Just a few days ago, she was still trying every possible way to win him back. How could she disappear without a trace like this? She must be up to some trick again, waiting for him to take the initiative to find her. Isn't those 2 villas the best proof? Shun Xiang calmed down a bit and turned to go downstairs. Have you really never seen the madam even once? His aggressive demeanor almost frightened the housekeeper. Looking at his bloodshot eyes, she stammered, No, I haven't. It's just that someone came a couple of days ago to pick up some things, saying they were here to collect the madam's final belongings. She didn't hear it clearly at the time, and seeing they had the villa's passcode, she assumed they were sent by the madam, so she didn't ask further questions. Shun Xiang sneered. Belongings of the deceased. Well done, Jiang Yuan. Your tricks are getting more and more elaborate. He clenched his jaw and called Liu Wei on the phone, shouting angrily, Get your ass over here, now. 20 minutes later, Liu Wei rushed into the courtyard in a frantic hurry. President Shun, where is Jiang Yuan? Shun Xian's gaze was heavy, his cold voice seemingly laced with ice. I remember you said she contacted you that day at the hospital. Liu Wei didn't expect Shun Xiang to summon him so urgently because of Jiang Yuan's matter. He froze briefly before saying, It wasn't madam who contacted me. Then who was it? Shun Xiang gritted his teeth, his sharp gaze piercing straight at Liu Wei. Don't think I don't know about your close private relationship with Jiang Yuan. What, are you covering for her now? No wonder Liu Wei has been so hard to find these past few days. Turns out he was being called away by Jiang Yuan. Liu Wei, don't forget whose side you're really on. Tell me right now where she went and what you've been helping her hide. If you can't explain clearly, pack your things and get out immediately. These words left Liu Wei even more confused. Didn't Mr. Shun himself say not to bother him with anything about his wife? Liu Wei pondered for a long time before realizing that Shun Xiang still didn't know the news of his wife's death. With a complicated expression, he spoke with difficulty. Mr. Shun, the call I received that day was from the traffic police. The car that collided with Miss Xu was driven by your wife. She died on the spot. Chapter 7. Shun Xiang suddenly raised his head and looked at him. What did you say? The gloom in those eyes was so heavy that it made Liu Wei's heart pound. 3 days ago, the project at Ronghua was urgently awaiting signing, but I couldn't reach you, so I had to call your wife instead. I didn't expect your wife to arrive with Miss Xu, and then there was a car accident right at the entrance. The smoke was too thick at the time, and I didn't even notice the license plate number, nor did he notice that while they were nervously rushing Xu Chenyang to the hospital, Jiang Yuan was watching them from not far away. Liu Wei has been blaming himself these past few days, and it's the first time personal matters have interfered with his work. Shun Xiang remained silent, his face as cold as ice. No, impossible. That couldn't have been Jiang Yuan. Isn't that woman supposed to be giving him the cold shoulder? Why would she come to the company? Liu Wei felt the current aura around him was somewhat unsettling and tentatively called out, President Shun, the arrangements for Madam's funeral have been completed. The report shows that Madam passed away half an hour after the accident. Before he could finish speaking, the silent man suddenly grabbed him by the collar and roared, I told you to shut up. Impossible. Jiang Yuan can't be dead. Shun Xiang abruptly shoved him away and stumbled out of the room. Liu Wei watched his boss's retreating figure, as if finally understanding something, but it was already too late. He sighed deeply and muttered to himself, "Mr. Shen, if you had known it would come to this, why did you act that way? Mrs. Shen's body has already been cremated. You'll never find her again." Shen Xiang refused to believe Jiang Yuan was dead, yet he had no idea where to look for her. He drove at high speed for a long stretch of road. A red light ahead made him slam on the brakes. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, the hard surface pressing painfully into his palms. "Jiang Yuan, where on earth are you?" He knew Jiang Yuan was an orphan, having grown up relying on part-time jobs to support herself since childhood, without a single relative to her name. Without him, she truly had nowhere to go. Shen Xiang took a deep breath and picked up the constantly vibrating phone beside him. Liu Wei had sent several messages and photos: Jiang Yuan's death report and cremation certificate. "President Shen, if you don't believe it, you can go to the traffic police department to check the surveillance footage. They have the complete video of the accident scene, as well as the autopsy report of your wife. Your wife, she really is gone. Please accept my condolences." Shen Xian's breathing grew heavy as he flung his phone onto the passenger seat with force, stepping on the accelerator and heading straight to the traffic police station. Everything was exactly as Liu Wei had described: the scene footage, the death certification, the cremation procedures, not a single discrepancy. Yet Shen Xiang simply refused to believe it. That's Jiang Yuan. She loved him for a full 5 years. And just a few days ago was still trying every possible way to get back together with him. How could she just die like that? How could she? Shen Xian's heart was suddenly overwhelmed with immense panic, as if a huge hole had been torn open in an instant, leaving a bottomless void. As he sat dazed in the empty living room, the hospital called, "Mr. Shen, Miss Xu suddenly has a severe headache, and even after taking painkillers, it's not helping. Could you come over now?" Shen Xian's eyes flickered slightly as he finally remembered Xu Chenyang. He pulled himself together and drove back to the hospital. Xu Chenyang's face was extremely pale, and her gaze grew even weaker at the sight of the man appearing at the door. "Ah Yang, why did you suddenly get a headache?" Shen Xiang walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. Xu Chenyang naturally moved closer and leaned into his embrace. "It might be a side effect. We'll have to wait for the test results to know for sure." "Weren't you going back to get a change of clothes? Where are your clothes?" The man was taken aback, only then remembering this issue. Shen Xian's dark eyes flickered slightly as he said, "I rushed back as soon as I heard you weren't feeling well. I forgot." Xu Chenyang lowered her head, sniffing at him like a kitten, and muttered, "You haven't showered all day. You smell awful, Yang." In the past, Shen Xiang would have been quite fond of this coquettish tone, but for some reason today, he only felt irritated. He lifted his hand to push the woman off him. Suppressing his impatience, he said, "If you're not feeling well, just sleep for a while." Xu Chenyan's expression stiffened momentarily before she naturally wrapped her arms around his again, pursing her lips to ask, "Are you still going out?" Before Shen Xiang could answer, a knock at the door sounded first. The man in a suit walked in, speaking in a businesslike tone. "Hello, Mr. Shen. I am the attorney representing Ms. Jiang before her passing, fully authorized to handle the divorce matters between you and her, as well as the disposition of her estate." Chapter 8. The lawyer took out a stack of documents and placed them in front of Shen Xiang. "Mr. Shen, these are the assets left behind by Ms. Jiang." Shen Xiang stared intently at the stack of A4 papers without saying a word. In contrast, Xu Chenyang reacted strongly, widening her eyes in shock. "Before death, Jiang Yuan, she..." The lawyer glanced at her and kindly explained, "Ms. Jiang passed away unexpectedly in a car accident 3 days ago. Based on her full authorization, I have the authority to handle the disposition of all her assets. Most of Ms. Jiang's property has been donated to charity foundations. The remainder should rightfully be returned to President Shen. Furthermore, given the fact that Miss Jiang has passed away, the cooling-off period for your divorce with her has consequently ended, and the marriage is naturally terminated. You are now a free man." After saying these words, the lawyer nodded politely. "If you have no other questions, I'll take my leave now." Shun Xiang remained silent throughout, like a soulless shell. Iron. Shu Chenyang pursed her lips, her gentle voice carrying comfort. Since it's already happened, don't be too upset, Jiang Yuan. She wouldn't want to see you like this. The man remained motionless, his naturally hanging hand had unknowingly clenched into a fist, the knuckles turning white. Shu Chenyang looked at his profile, recalling the lawyer's words from earlier. So, he had already divorced that woman long ago. Then why didn't you tell her? Was it because deep down, you still held onto the fantasy that they could reconcile? Shu Chenyang gazed at the man's profile, her heart a turmoil of mixed emotions, yet she felt an inexplicable sense of relief. What use were fantasies? What use was regret? Jiang Yuan was already dead. He died in the car accident 3 days ago. A faint smile flickered at the corner of Shu Chenyang's lips, vanishing in an instant. She thought Shun Xian's despondency was only temporary, that he simply hadn't yet come to terms with the fact that Jiang Yuan was already dead. Although they had been married for 5 years, Shu Chenyang had more faith in Shun Xian's feelings for her. However, the truth nearly made Shu Chenyang grit his teeth in frustration. Although Shun Xiang stayed with her in the hospital, he became increasingly silent. He would often stare in one direction, lost in thought for long periods. He stopped shaving, looking unkempt and disheveled, no longer the radiant and handsome figure he once was. Shu Chenyang couldn't bear it any longer and forced a smile as she spoke. Yang, I'm being discharged from the hospital tomorrow. Why don't you tidy up a bit, and we can go out for a nice meal? I'm so sick of eating hospital food every day. The last sentence carried a coquettish tone, but Shun Xiang remained completely unmoved. He merely shifted his gaze slightly and asked, tidy up what? Just, Shu Chenyang's smile stiffened a bit. Take a shower, change your clothes, and tidy up your hair and beard. She poked the man's face lightly, trying to keep her tone light. Look at you, taking care of me for a few days has turned you into a mess. Can I have my handsome, polished Yang back? Shun Xiang pulled her hand down, his response coming out almost instinctively. All the clothes I used to wear were prepared by Jiang Yuan for me. She had a great sense of style, knowing exactly which tie went with which suit. She also loved the aftershave from Hermes Tay de Hermes, which smelled wonderful. For the past 5 years, Shun Xiang had grown accustomed to Jiang Yuan's care, from the 3 daily meals to major company projects. That woman had long permeated his life like air, leaving no corner untouched. But such a person, she died. Before dying, she didn't leave him a single word. Shu Chenyang's face turned grim as he looked up at him in disbelief. Then what do you mean by this now? Jiang Yuan is already gone. No matter how much you say, she won't hear you. Do you understand? She grabbed Shun Xian's arm with both hands, gripping tightly as if trying to wake him up this way. You should live well in the present. Yang, I'm the one by your side now. What if Jiang Yuan is dead? I'm still here. Or what do you want to do? Break up with me, or go join her in the grave. Chapter 9. Watching the woman grow increasingly agitated, Shun Xian's eyes remained calm and unruffled. He gave a self-deprecating smile. Yang, I wasn't thinking about anything. I just need some time to sort out my feelings. That day, if I had just walked over to take a look, I would have found Jiang Yuan seriously injured. I could have bought her some time, and she wouldn't have died. We all owe her. After saying this, Shun Xiang once again pulled Shu Chenyang away. His movements were gentle, even tender, but the words he spoke were utterly cruel. Yang, I'll send someone to pick you up from the hospital tomorrow. There's nothing wrong with your health anymore, and I have company matters to attend to. Get some rest. Iron. Shu Chenyang wanted to grab him, but only managed to touch the hem of his clothes. Her heart uncontrollably panicked. Yang, can't you stay? The man didn't look back, striding out of the ward with his long legs. According to Shu Chenyang's expectations, since Jiang Yuan was already dead, Shun Xiang should have taken her back to the South Bay Villa, meticulously planned a proposal, complete with a diamond ring, an extravagant wedding dress, and a grand ceremony. Yet, not only did Shun Xiang fail to do so, he instead became deeply immersed in guilt over Jiang Yuan, spiraling out of control. After that day, she never saw him again. Shu Chenyang waited for a week but couldn't sit still any longer. so she decided to go directly to the Shun Corporation to intercept him. For 3 consecutive days, she didn't even catch a glimpse of Shun Xiang. "Where exactly is your CEO, Shun? I'm his girlfriend. Let me in." The receptionist didn't recognize her and found the claim amusing. Have women these days become so shameless? If you were really CEO Shun's girlfriend, why would you need me to contact him for you? "Miss, if you don't have an appointment, please leave immediately. Don't disrupt our work, or I'll have to call security, and that won't look good for you." Xu Chenyang wanted to continue arguing, but her eyes flickered as she suddenly noticed Liu Wei emerging from inside. She immediately ran over. "Liu Wei, where is Shun Xiang?" Liu Wei was startled by the figure that suddenly darted out. "Miss Xu," he greeted with a sigh, "President Shun isn't at the company." Xu Chenyang hadn't rested well for several days. Her skin condition was poor, and her eyes were full of red veins. She had no other choice. Fu Zhon didn't want her, and if she couldn't even hold on to Shun Xiang now, how would she survive in the future? Xu Chenyang clung to Liu Wei like a lifeline, afraid he might run away. "Then where is he?" Liu Wei felt she was somewhat pitiable, especially since, given Mr. Shun's current state, having someone who can persuade him might be for the best. "Mr. Shun is probably at his wife's cemetery. If Miss Xu wants to find him, she can try looking there." The largest cemetery in Haicheng is located in the southern suburbs. Shun Xiang had been coming here with alcohol for several days in a row, just sitting quietly and occasionally speaking a few words to the person in the photo. It's quite ironic. When Jiang Yuan was still alive, he wouldn't even spare her a glance. Now that she's gone, he spends every day reminiscing over a photograph. "Jiang Yuan, don't you think I'm ridiculous?" The woman in the photo smiled faintly. As if acknowledging his words, Shun Xiang lowered his gaze, the self-mocking curve of his lips growing increasingly bitter. He picked up the alcohol and desperately poured it into his mouth. Suddenly, a hand reached out and snatched the whiskey bottle from his grasp, angrily scolding, "If you really don't want to live anymore, then go die. At least that way people might think you're sacrificing yourself for Jiang Yuan. Who are you putting on this half-dead act for?" Chapter 10. Shun Xiang looked up. It was his friend Wen Yang. He gave a nonchalant hum of laughter, raising his hand to snatch the bottle. "Got nothing better to do today. What brings you here to lecture me? If I don't step in, are you planning to drink yourself to death here?" Wen Yang kicked him irritably, glancing at the bottle the man had reclaimed. "Do you even know the alcohol content of that? Drinking like this, how many lives do you think you have to spare?" He had been on a business trip to Europe for a month, and upon returning, he heard about the situation between Shun Xiang and Jiang Yuan. A perfectly good couple ended up like this because of a woman who suddenly appeared. It's really hard to know what to say. Wen Yang had originally intended to beat Shun Xiang up, but upon seeing him in this wretched state, she found it hard to bring herself to do it. Shun Xian's gaze was already somewhat dazed. Alcohol could temporarily numb his pain. Most importantly, Wen Yang, he looked at the bottle in his hand, his voice hoarse as he said, "Do you know, every time I drink, I can see her, Wen Yang. She said she doesn't blame me, told me to live well." Wen Yang sneered, "You really think too much." Shun Xiang took another sip from the bottle and said calmly, "I know I wronged her. I never took her love seriously before, and even her death, I bear inescapable responsibility. So this is how you choose to atone." Wen Yang looked down at him, gritting her teeth as she said, "If I were Jiang Yuan, seeing you in this drunken state, I'd only wish for you to get the hell away and stop defiling my space." The man paused, the pain in his eyes slowly spreading. "Is that so? Then what else could it be?" Wen Yang grabbed his collar with both hands and pulled him up. "Do you think this is you repenting now? No, you're just trying to make yourself feel better. Don't push everything onto Jiang Yuan. She never asked you to do anything. It's all your own wishful thinking. You did it all for yourself." Shun Xiang let himself be dragged along. As if he had become an empty shell, he turned his head to look at the woman in the photo, familiar yet strange. At this moment, he suddenly realized that he might never have truly understood her. When Yang forcefully shook him off, her emotions equally tangled. He and Shun Xiang had grown up together, so he was naturally well aware of everything regarding Jiang Yuan. When Jiang Yuan had pursued Shun Xiang back then, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say the whole world knew about it. Later, when they officially got together, when Yang had even teased Shun Xiang, "It's not easy to meet a woman this sincere in a lifetime, settle down properly, and you'll grow old together." And then what happened? That woman surnamed Shu had barely returned when he ruined everything, even costing Jiang Yuan her life. Didn't you adore that Shu Chenyang so much? Since you were so eager to be the rebound guy, you should have just lived your happy life. Don't try to have it both ways, playing the whore while pretending to be virtuous. Shun Xiang stood motionless, his slumped figure seemingly shrouded in an inescapable shadow. After a long silence, his hoarse voice finally admitted, "I thought, I didn't love her either." He thought he had just gotten used to it. Gotten used to Jiang Yuan's presence, gotten used to Jiang Yuan's care. As long as Jiang Yuan was there, all complicated matters could be resolved. Only when she was gone did he realize her shadow lingered in every corner. He feared seeing her, yet longed for her presence. "I regret it." Shun Xiang clutched his hair fiercely, his voice hoarse with emotion. "When Yang, I truly regret it. It's all my fault. If I could give my life in exchange for hers, would she come back to life?" When Yang had never seen Shun Xiang like this before, the words of reprimand he had prepared were now stuck in his throat. He let out a deep sigh and sat down beside Shun Xiang. "All this talk is useless nonsense. If you truly cared about her even a little, you should finish what she left undone, live well, and be a better person from now on. And one more thing, I watched the surveillance footage from your company's entrance. Don't you think it's strange?" Shun Xiang suddenly raised his head. "What do you mean?" The car accident was very suspicious. When Yang frowned slightly, knowing that he was blinded by being in the situation, and pointed out directly, at such a large intersection, a one-way dual carriageway, Jiang Yuan was driving normally. Why did the crash specifically target her car? Shun Xian's Adam's apple moved as he fell into a long silence. Not long after, when Yang received a call from the company, seeing that Shun Xian's emotions had stabilized, he said, "Wallowing in despair is useless. If Jiang Yuan were alive, she would only feel more that her past efforts were unworthy. Think carefully about what you should do next." After when Yang left, the cemetery fell silent once more. Shun Xiang turned his gaze to the tombstone, the haze in his eyes now gone. "Jiang Yuan, can you point me in a direction?" The wind rustled by, but no one gave him an answer. In less than 10 seconds, footsteps approached from not far away, growing louder. Shun Xian's heart suddenly began to pound, and an inexplicable anticipation surged within him. For a long moment, his stiff neck slowly turned. Shu Chenyang clearly saw the light in his eyes flicker and then fade. Her breathing became slightly uneven, but she tried her best to steady her emotions as she walked over and said, "I heard from Liu Wei that you might be here, so I came to see." Shun Xiang withdrew his gaze. "Didn't I tell you to rest properly?" To be honest, he's a bit unsure how to face Shu Chenyang now. Love, yes, he's absolutely certain he's been thinking about her all these past years. After Jiang Yuan left, the once clear situation seemed to blur in an instant, leaving even him unsure of who he truly loved. Shu Chenyang placed the flowers he had brought before the tombstone and said softly, "I never really looked at her properly before, but today I realized that Jiang Yuan was quite beautiful." Shun Xiang instinctively replied, "She was always beautiful." Shu Chenyang's face paled slightly as she awkwardly changed the subject. "Yang, you must have been here for quite a while, right? Shouldn't you head back now?" Noticing the man's puzzled gaze, she smiled and added, "It's too cold here. What if you catch a cold?" Only then did Shun Xiang notice how lightly dressed Shu Chenyang was. Frowning, he said, "Why are you wearing so little? You just got out of the hospital. You need to take better care of yourself." Touched by his concern, Shu Chenyang's eyes reddened, and she replied in a plaintive tone, I was worried about you too. Let's go back together, okay?" Shun Xiang had originally intended to let her leave first. Seeing her haggard face, he ultimately couldn't bear to. "Alright, let's go back together." Once in the car, Shun Xiang recalled when Yang's earlier words and casually asked, Yang, do you still remember what happened during the car accident that day? He remembered clearly that Xu Chenyang had lost control of the steering wheel and veered into the oncoming lane only after being bumped by someone else. Xu Chenyang was taken aback, not expecting him to suddenly bring this up. I was too panicked at the time and don't remember anything. Why do you ask? Shun Shiyang turned his head to glance at her. Amused by her startled expression, he reached out to pat her head and said, "Did remembering scare you again? It's fine. I was just asking casually. If you don't remember, then forget it. The traffic police still have the surveillance footage. So he can go and copy a copy to take back and review it slowly." Xu Chenyang looked at his thoughtful expression and felt inexplicably uneasy. "Are you suspecting that someone hit me on purpose?" "Just a suspicion." The man's voice was deep. "When Yang just reminded me, that stretch of road is very wide, and there had never been any accidents there before, but that day, several cars collided in a chain reaction. Jiang Yuan was gone, and Yang was severely injured. Yet everyone else was completely unharmed. Upon closer reflection, it indeed holds up to scrutiny." Xu Chenyang let out a soft ah, her expression unclear in the flickering sunlight. Only her gentle voice could be heard saying, "It probably won't happen. Who would do such a thankless task?" Shun Xiang simply smiled without responding. He didn't want to burden her with conspiracy theories. After all, Yang had always been innocent, and it was best for her to stay that way. No one spoke again for the rest of the journey. Shun Xiang took Xu Chenyang back to her residence. "Go back and rest well. Call me if anything comes up. Focus on recovering your health first." "Okay," Xu Chenyang nodded. "Where are you going then?" "I'm heading to the traffic police station." Shun Xiang unbuckled his seatbelt and got out of the car, walking around to the passenger side to open the door for her. Yang, be good. Once I get to the bottom of this, we'll be together properly," he said. Xu Chenyang stepped out of the car. Her naturally falling hair obscuring the expression on her face, she murmured softly, "Drive carefully. Get some rest early. Good night." Xu Chenyang stood by the roadside, watching the two lines of car taillights grow increasingly distant from her. Her fingers clutched the strap of her bag so tightly that she didn't even notice it herself. "If we figure it all out, can we be together properly? But if you really do figure it all out, I'm afraid we'll never be able to be together again." Chapter 11. Shun Xiang reviewed all the available video footage again, including the surveillance cameras at the company building's entrance and those from the shops at the intersection across the street. But the current issue is that the van that hit Xu Chenyang had fake license plates. After the accident, the driver fled the scene immediately upon realizing the situation had turned bad, and they still haven't been found. After hearing his concerns, the traffic police officer's expression immediately turned serious. "Mr. Shun, rest assured. We will promptly transfer the case to the Criminal Investigation Department and have them clarify the matter as soon as possible." "All right, thank you for your hard work." Shun Xiang dragged his exhausted body home as the sky had already darkened. The dimly lit villa was completely silent, eerily quiet. Only then did he belatedly realize, since filing for divorce, Jiang Yuan has erased all traces of herself from his life. Whether at home or at work, nothing related to her could be found anymore. Shun Xiang stood in the center of the living room like a soulless puppet, finally covering his face in the eerie silence, utterly defeated. Time passed day by day, and in the blink of an eye, half a year had gone by. The perpetrator behind that car accident was eventually caught. But he was merely the owner of an abandoned car factory. The reason he had fled at the time was because the vehicle had fake license plates. Although there was a result, it wasn't what Shun Xiang had hoped for. Xu Chenyang comforted him. "Isn't this good? Or did you actually hope to find something? The car accident was just an accident, and the driver has paid the price he deserved. Yang, let's move forward together." "Okay." For the past 6 months, Shun Xiang would still care for her and occasionally have meals with her, but he just wouldn't define their relationship. Xu Chenyang was going crazy. If she had known this would be the outcome, what was the point of everything she did after returning to the country? Shun Xiang pinched his forehead and said in a deep voice, Yang, you should go back first. I want some peace and quiet." Xu Chenyang had no choice but to leave reluctantly, but she had already made up her mind in secret. There was an important banquet in 2 days, and Shun Shiyang had already promised to take her along. When the time came, she would make sure he publicly acknowledged her identity in front of everyone. The identity of his fiancée. This cocktail party was hosted by the Mu family, inviting only the wealthy and influential, encompassing nearly the entire upper-class circle of Haicheng. Xu Chenyang had dressed up early, waiting for Shun Shiyang to pick her up. At 7 in the evening, the doorbell rang outside. She rushed to open the door with excitement, only to find Liu Wei standing outside. Xu Chunyan's expression changed slightly. "Where is your President Shun, Miss Xu?" President Shun had to go ahead to discuss a project with President Mu first, so he asked me to pick you up. "Oh, I see." Xu Chenyang smiled. "Let's go then." Outwardly, she appeared understanding, but inwardly she was quite displeased. "What's so urgent that you have to go there first? Can't you just take a detour to pick her up?" "Shun Shiyang, have you really changed?" While Xu Chenyang was lost in her thoughts, Shun Shiyang had already arrived at the venue. The Shun and Mu families have a major project coming up, and he came early today specifically to discuss the details with Mu Anson. The waiter led him to the second-floor lounge and politely said, "Mr. Shun, Mr. Mu is inside." Shun Shiyang nodded and knocked before entering. Upon seeing him, Mu Anson greeted warmly. "You're finally here. I was just about to give you a call. Sorry, there was some traffic on the way." "Just kidding. Have a seat." Both were straightforward people. And after a brief exchange of pleasantries, they quickly got down to business, addressing all the potential issues that might arise in the project. Mu Anson smiled and said, "I've never had any reservations about collaborating with President Shun, but this time I've also invited a friend to join us." "I hope you don't mind," Shun Shiyang replied. "Of course, I have no objections to President Mu's friend." "That's fine, I knew it." Mu Anson clapped his hands, in a rather good mood. "Don't worry. He's always been a top figure in the industry abroad. It took a lot of persuasion to get him to come back this time. I'll introduce you to him later." "Alright, I'm looking forward to it." After discussing the important matters, Shun Shiyang glanced at his watch and said, "It's about time, President Mu. I'll head downstairs first and see you later." As he stepped out of the lounge, he took out his phone, ready to call Xu Chenyang. His gaze inadvertently swept past the corner ahead. Shun Xian's pupils dilated in shock, unable to believe his eyes. Chapter 12. Over the past 6 months, Shun Xiang had dreamed of that person every single day, so even if it was just a fleeting glimpse, he could still recognize her. In the moment he was lost in thought. The woman had already vanished without a trace. Shun Xiang couldn't care about anything else. He immediately ran after her. "Jiang Yuan, it was just a moment ago, and the distance wasn't far." Yet that woman seemed to have vanished into thin air. Shun Xiang stood at the end of the corridor, looking around, unsure which way to go. His breathing was rapid, his chest heaving violently. "Jiang Yuan, I know it's you. Come out, let's talk this through face to face. Jiang Yuan, please, come out." The long, empty corridor echoed with no response. A waiter downstairs heard the noise and rushed up, startled by Shun Xian's disheveled appearance, and asked with concern, "Sir, do you need any help?" Shun Xiang glanced at him and said, "Have you seen a woman in a white dress, about 1.68 meters tall, with wavy hair, very elegant?" The waiter was taken aback. Downstairs, before he could finish his sentence, the man in front of him vanished like a gust of wind. The waiter was even more confused. "I was going to say, there are many ladies like that downstairs." At this moment, Shun Xiang had stopped thinking. His mind filled with only one thought: find her, find her. No matter how long she's been hiding, no matter what purpose she has for appearing today, he definitely won't let her escape again. The banquet hall downstairs was already crowded with many people, filled with greetings and pleasantries. Shun Xian's crimson gaze swept around. But he still didn't see the person he was looking for. Someone who recognized him came up to say hello, but he ignored them completely. It was unclear how much time had passed, just as Shun Xiang was about to give up. His gaze suddenly fixed on the pastry section. The woman was dressed in a white gown, her long, curly black hair casually draped over her shoulders. Though her back was turned and her face unseen, he somehow knew exactly who she was. His heartbeat gradually quickened. Shen Xian's fingertips trembled slightly, and it took him a while before he lifted his foot and walked in that direction. Jiang Yuan, as the name was called out, the woman turned her head in response. What do you want? Shen Xiang looked at the completely unfamiliar face before him and instinctively took half a step back. How could it not be her? Impossible. His incredulous expression struck Fu Qingcheng as no different from that of a lunatic. She rolled her eyes inwardly and said impatiently, Sir, could you straighten out your words before speaking? If there's nothing else, I'll be on my way. My brother is waiting for me. Still lost in shock, Shen Xiang didn't respond. Fu Qingcheng gave him an undisguised once-over before taking the cake and leaving. Back in the VIP lounge, she set down her plate and flopped onto the sofa, complaining, Bro, was that really the kind of guy Yuanyuan used to like? He doesn't seem all that bright. The man on the sofa was busy reviewing documents on his laptop and ignored her. Brother, Fu Qingcheng walked over and unceremoniously snatched the laptop from him. I'm talking to you. The man's refined features were strikingly handsome, his chiseled face a perfect blend of charm and danger, his brows furrowed slightly as he demanded, Give me the laptop, then pay attention to me. Fu Zhon cast her a casual glance without uttering a word. Fu Qingcheng still felt a bit uneasy inside. Reluctantly, she handed the computer back and muttered softly, Aren't you curious? I heard Yuanyuanjie used to like him so much. He's decent looking, and his voice is pleasant. But in my opinion, that guy is a complete idiot, not even worth a single strand of your hair. Brother, she rattled on, and it wasn't until this last line that Fu Zhon lazily responded, So, things that aren't even worthy opponents have never been worth my attention, stinky fart. Fu Qingcheng pouted and sat down beside him. Suddenly, she leaned in with a smile. But, do I really look that much like Sister Yuanyuan? I just passed by casually, and that Shen guy was completely fooled. Fu Zhon gave a non-committal hum. You'd better not mention this to your sister Yuanyuan, unless you want her to beat you up. Fu Qingcheng and Jiang Yuan were almost identical in height and figure, with just a slight imitation of demeanor. Their silhouettes could be said to be exactly the same. This isn't fun at all, Fu Qingcheng sighed, propping her chin on her hand. I thought we could have some thrilling revenge drama against that scumbag. But alas, Sister Yuanyuan is too kind-hearted. She would never do such a thing. Fu Zhon chuckled lightly, his already handsome face becoming even more breathtaking. It's not kindness. Then what is it? Too lazy. Fu Qingcheng was taken aback for a moment. Then pouted and said, You understand Yuanyuanjie the best, but how come you still haven't won her over after all this time? Chapter 13. Fu Zhon's expression froze, and he casually grabbed a throw pillow and hurled it at her. Damn girl, why do you always have to bring up the sorest point? Fu Qingcheng finally managed to turn the tables, laughing so hard she couldn't straighten up. Downstairs, Shen Xiang snapped back to reality and wanted to chase after her to ask what had happened. He had just taken a step forward when his arm was grabbed by Xu Chenyang, who had just arrived. Yang, I called you several times just now. Why didn't you hear me? Shen Xiang looked at the aggrieved expression on her face and felt a twinge of guilt. Sorry, Chenyang, I just saw someone I know and wanted to go say hello. What acquaintance could be weighing so heavily on his thoughts? Xu Chenyang felt suspicious inwardly, but maintained an understanding expression on her face. Then let's go together. It just so happens that President Li was asking about your whereabouts earlier. We can meet him along the way. Shen Xiang frowned, but remembering how little time he'd spent with Xu Chenyang recently, a pang of guilt made him suppress the thoughts that had just crossed his mind. All right, let's go. After making the rounds of greetings, Xu Chenyang's face was practically blooming with smiles. In the elite circles of the wealthy, what they excel at most is saying pretty words and speculating about the women by each man's side, and her identity was, after all, an open secret. Miss Xu and President Shen make such a perfect match. Our wedding bells in the air. Don't forget to send us invitations when the time comes. Such remarks kept coming. Yet Shen Xiang never denied any of them. She was secretly delighted when the host of the evening, Mu Anson, emerged with a glass of wine in hand. After exchanging pleasantries with the guests, he walked straight toward Shen Xiang. Xiang, I've been looking everywhere for you. Didn't we agree I'd introduce a friend to you? Forgot? Shun Xiang smiled faintly. Shouldn't we wait for President Mu to finish his business first? Mu Anson burst into laughter. Let's go. He's over there. No one objected. So Xu Chenyang took Shun Xian's arm and they went together. She had been secretly pleased with herself. But the moment she caught sight of that familiar figure, the smile vanished from her face. Mu Anson noticed nothing unusual and continued enthusiastically making introductions. This is the industry leader I told you about, Fu Zhon. Fu Zhon is a pioneer in AI technology abroad. His company's road has secured countless patents, whether in unmanned aerial vehicles or derivative developments. They're practically at the top of the field. If it weren't for our friendship and my repeated invitations, he wouldn't have come back to join our little venture. Fu Zhon raised an eyebrow and modestly replied, President Mu, you flatter me. It would be my honor to board your ship. Enough of that. Mu Anson laughed heartily and patted him on the shoulder. We're all friends here. No need for formalities. Shun Xiang remained silent, his burning gaze fixed on the man across from him. He never expected that the friend Mu Anson mentioned would actually be Fu Zhon. Why did he suddenly return to the country? Could it be? Shun Xian's eyes shifted slightly to the side, where the woman in his line of sight looked pale and utterly disbelieving. Xu Chenyang gripped his arm tightly, the force so strong it seemed she had forgotten his existence. At this moment, Mu Anson also noticed something amiss, his gaze shifting between the group for a moment. Zhon, President Shun. What? Do you know each other? Fu Zhon looked at the two opposite him with a faint smile, saying slowly, President Shun and I were schoolmates, not exactly close, but we do know each other. As for this Miss Xu, the smile at the corner of his lips deepened a little. We were good friends for a while. Mu Anson was a shrewd man. He understood everything the moment he heard those words. In that case, I should leave some time for you old friends to catch up. He laughed heartily and signaled the waiter to bring some drinks. As it happens, I also need to go out and greet the guests. You two chat first, and we'll discuss the important matters later. Once Mu Anson left, the lounge fell into an inexplicable silence. Xu Chenyang even felt as if the air had grown thinner. She couldn't take it anymore and looked up at the man in front of her. Gritting her teeth, she said, Why are you here? Fu Zhon looked at her lazily. If Miss Xu can be here, why can't I? Weren't you in America? Didn't you say you'd never come back? Then just stay there properly. Why do you have to show up in front of me again? As Xu Chenyang spoke, her eyes reddened, recalling those past days and how this man had once rejected her. He said he didn't love her, and that was that. Now he's back without a word. Does he really think she would still shamelessly throw herself at him? Chapter 14. Xu Chenyang was filled with resentment, unaware that in Fu Zhon's eyes, her demeanor only evoked bewilderment and amusement. Miss Xu, perhaps you've misunderstood something. I returned solely for business. Had we not met here today, I wouldn't even have known you were in Haicheng. Fu Zhon curled his lips, perfectly embodying the roguish demeanor of a wealthy playboy. Besides, with someone standing right beside you, isn't it rather impolite to be so eager in demonstrating your lingering affection for me? Xu Chenyang finally realized that she was still holding Shun Xian's arm at this very moment. Her face turned pale then green, her heart fluttering slightly as she whispered, Yang. Shun Xiang didn't seem to react much, his dark eyes like bottomless pits. No one could tell what he was truly thinking. He patted Xu Chenyan's hand reassuringly, then looked up at Fu Zhon and said, I never expected President Fu to be a friend of Mr. Mu. But this works out well. At least we won't need to waste more words. Don't you agree? Fu Zhon spread his hands and said with great interest, Since President Shun has said so, of course. As for the past matters, Shun Xiang narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, It's all in the past. President Fu doesn't need to use those things to make things difficult for Yang Yang. Make things difficult? Fu Zhon gave a light laugh, his deep gaze sweeping over Xu Chenyang. That glance pierced Xu Chenyan's eyes like a thorn, sending an uncontrollable panic through her chest. What exactly was Fu Zhon planning? Yet her worry proved entirely unnecessary. Fu Zhon said nothing further, quickly shifting the conversation to the project at hand. When it comes to work, both of them switched to professional mode, speaking with ease and confidence. Xu Chenyang sat to the side, watching these two, the two most important men in her life, feeling as if she was sitting on pins and needles. After about 10 minutes or so, when the work matters were mostly discussed, Shen Xiang prepared to leave with Xu Chenyang. But the door of the lounge was pushed open from the outside first. The girl was dressed in a white gown, holding up the hem of her skirt with one hand, her expression lively and adorable. "Bro, are you done yet? This kind of banquet is so boring. Sister Yuanyuan is already here to pick us up. Can we just go home?" Only after speaking did she realize there were two strangers in the room. Shen Xiang and Xu Chenyang were also looking at her at that moment. It was actually her. Shen Xiang thought of the figure he had just seen, and his breathing became slightly uneven. Xu Chenyang, on the other hand, let out a sigh of relief. She had always known that Fu Zhong had a spoiled younger sister with a bad temper, who was used to getting her way. If she came to call Fu Zhong away, then he would definitely have to leave. Finally, this hellish scene could come to an end. Fu Zhong took a step forward, effectively blocking Shen Xian's line of sight. With a polite yet distant smile, he said, "President Shen, let's call it a day for now. We'll take our leave and arrange another meeting with President Mu for further discussion." Shortly after Fu Zhong and Fu Qingcheng left, Shen Xiang suddenly snapped back to reality. Shaking off Xu Qinyan's hand, he rushed out after them. Wait, what that woman just said was, "Sister Yuanyuan, Jiang Yuan." This was the only thought in Shen Xian's mind, but by the time he rushed to the entrance, all he could see was the flow of traffic on the road. The Fu siblings were already gone. Shen Xiang tilted his head back, his breathing uneven and labored. He stood by the roadside for a long while, overwhelmed by a flood of emotions. Was he bewitched? Why did he always feel like she was still alive? Shen Xiang gave a bitter smile and turned away dejectedly. At that very moment, in a car passing behind him, Jiang Yuan's smiling face was clearly visible. Chapter 15. While driving, Jiang Yuan listened to Fu Qingcheng recount amusing incidents from the banquet. Honestly, those people were just too boring, endlessly flattering. Wasn't it all just to curry favor and climb the social ladder? The pastries are really delicious though. Oh dear, I meant to bring you a little cake, but I forgot. The light ahead turned red just then. Jiang Yuan stepped on the brake and glanced at her. With a smile, she said, "I've already had dinner. If you'd like, we can go together next time." Fu Qingcheng nodded repeatedly and blurted out, "Sister Yuanyuan, you're just too kind. I saw that toad today. He's not even worthy of tying your shoelaces." As the words fell, silence filled the car. Realizing her mistake, Fu Qingcheng closed her eyes and slapped her mouth lightly. Jiang Yuan's smile faded, the light turned green, and she turned her head to continue driving. Fu Zhong frowned and glanced at his sister, just about to speak when the woman in the driver's seat said calmly, "There's no question of being worthy or not. Those experiences were just me paying the price for my own seriousness. So now she doesn't love Shen Xiang, nor does she have any regrets." Fu Qingcheng quickly chimed in. Yes, Sister Yuanyuan is the coolest." Jiang Yuan chuckled, "No need to be so cautious, since I've decided to come back. It's inevitable that I'll meet Shen Xiang sooner or later. It's not a big deal." Fu Qingcheng and Fu Zhong exchanged a glance, then looked away in perfect sync. Jiang Yuan had indeed long prepared herself to meet Shen Xiang, but she never expected the day to come so soon. Over the weekend, after finishing all his work, Fu Zhong invited her to watch the latest movie release. It's a Hong Kong suspense film with good reviews. "I think you'll like it." Jiang Yuan had just returned from her run, her face and body still glistening with sweat. "I'll go upstairs to take a shower first. Wait for me a moment." Fu Zhong gave a slight nod and reached out his hand. Jiang Yuan naturally handed him the towel, then took a step forward and asked, "What about Qingcheng? Isn't she coming with us?" A faint flicker passed through Fu Zhong's eyes. She made an appointment with friends for a beauty treatment. Fu Qingcheng had always been abroad, so how could he have any friends back home? Jiang Yuan curled her lips but didn't expose him. "I'll be quick, just 15 minutes. The woman's graceful figure disappeared around the corner. Fu Zhong looked down at the towel in his hand and flashed a smile that could charm the world. He has never been one to rush things. Getting her accustomed to him little by little like this seemed rather nice. Jiang Yuan came downstairs on time. and the man downstairs had actually changed his outfit as well, by unfortunate coincidence. His innerwear matched the color scheme of her outerwear. With a slight raise of her brow, she teased as she walked, on purpose. Fu Zhon had no idea what she would wear, but he still raised an eyebrow and said, a suitor's self-cultivation. Don't expose my little tricks. Jiang Yuan sighed inwardly, with a face like Fu Zhon's. Even if he claimed the moon came out during the day, every woman would probably nod in agreement. No wonder Xu Chenyang had been so obsessed with him back then. Fu Zhon had chosen the nearest cinema. In the evening, the mall was packed with people. He glanced at his watch and asked softly, we can grab a late-night snack after the movie. Are you hungry? Jiang Yuan smiled helplessly and said, Mr. Fu, we just had dinner about 2 hours ago. Oh. Fu Zhon pretended to have a sudden realization. He leaned in closer. Well then, dear Ms. Jiang, might you need a cup of milk tea, or a piece of cake, or perhaps a bucket of popcorn? Such affected words, when spoken by him, carried an inexplicable tone of coaxing and allure. Jiang Yuan couldn't help but curl her lips upward, playing along as she said, no need, sir, I'm on a diet recently. Miss Jiang, you're naturally beautiful and as lovely as a flower. Why would you need to lose weight? How about supporting my business? Okay, alright, enough. Jiang Yuan couldn't keep up the act anymore and laughed, giving him a playful pat. Fu Zhon's smiling eyes lingered on her for a couple of seconds before he leisurely stepped back. My vision finally cleared, and before Jiang Yuan could even retract the smile on her face, she looked up to see the man across from her with a gloomy expression and the woman standing there in stunned silence. Xu Chenyang, long time no see. Chapter 16. Fu Zhon noticed something was off with her expression and asked with concern, what's wrong? Following his gaze, he also saw those two people. He let out a light chuckle, casually slipping one hand into his pocket, returning to his usual lazy and carefree demeanor. President Shen, Miss Xu, what a coincidence. Shun Xiang ignored him, his crimson eyes fixed directly on Jiang Yuan. It's her. It really was her. She's still alive. Shun Xiang suddenly felt his heart, which had been dead for over half a year, finally come alive and beat vigorously at this moment. His Adam's apple bobbed, and the next second, he strode toward Jiang Yuan, grabbed her hand, and pulled her aside. Fu Zhon's eyes turned sharp, but before he could react, he heard the woman's calm voice. I need to talk with him. Wait for me a moment. He was about to lift it when he casually set it back down again. Still looking as carefree and unrestrained as ever, Xu Chenyang was left standing there, her face alternating between pale and flushed, unsure even how to react. She didn't want to face Fu Zhon alone, at least not right now. She had seen every bit of his interaction with that woman just now. Xu Chenyang had chased after Fu Zhon for so long in the past, yet he had always been casual and indifferent. When had he ever gone out of his way to amuse a woman like he did today? But why Jiang Yuan? Anyone but that woman. Xu Chenyang had to admit that she was practically consumed with jealousy. Fu Zhon observed the changes in her expression and, with a half-smile, crossed his arms and said, Miss Xu, are you worried about President Shen? Don't be. Our Jiang Yuan wouldn't give him a second glance. You're Jiang Yuan. Xu Chenyang dug her fingernails deeply into her palm. Are you and Jiang Yuan together now? Fu Zhon's brows twitched slightly, but he didn't respond. Fu Zhon, you bastard. Xu Chenyang absolutely despised him for acting like this. Yet she was utterly helpless. She took a deep breath, forcing herself not to dwell on the past. If you're already with Jiang Yuan, why didn't you just stay in America with her? What are you doing back here? Fu Zhon looked at the face before him. Back when they were together, he hadn't taken the time to really look, but now he realized it was truly ugly. He narrowed his eyes, his tone betraying no emotion. What's the matter, Miss Xu? Are you afraid of us returning to the country? Xu Chenyang's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Nothing much. Fu Zhon had no intention of elaborating with her and simply said, since I'm back, of course there's something to attend to, but it has nothing to do with Miss Xu. Xu Chenyang noticed him lowering his head to check his phone, but the unease in her heart only grew heavier. If it were just Fu Zhon alone, that would be one thing, but there was also Jiang Yuan. Jiang Yuan wasn't dead and had returned. What exactly were they planning to do? What do you want to do? On the other side, Shen Xiang was also asking Jiang Yuan this question. The empty hallway was quiet, with only the man's deep, hoarse voice breaking the silence. Jiang Yuan looked at his reddened eyes. Her heart unmoved. None of your business. How could it have nothing to do with me? Jiang Yuan, we're husband and wife. Shen Xiang felt she was now a complete stranger. As if he was meeting her for the first time, this feeling gave him a deep sense of powerlessness, as if all his emotions were hitting a wall of cotton. If you weren't dead, why didn't you contact me? Do you know how long I've been searching for you? Jiang Yuan, you weren't like this before. In the past, Jiang Yuan would always inform him in advance no matter what she did. On the contrary, he didn't seem to care much. You said it yourself. That was in the past. Jiang Yuan stated the fact coldly. Shen Xiang, we no longer have a marital relationship. Whether I live or die, or what I choose to do, has nothing to do with you. Shen Xian's lips trembled, and it took him a long time to make a sound. No, we didn't get divorced, but Jiang Yuan is already dead. Without Jiang Yuan, there naturally ceased to be a marital relationship. Jiang Yuan found it somewhat amusing and said, didn't you dream of growing old with Xu Chenyang? Now that your dream has come true, why should you care about what happens to me? Oh no, Shen Xiang, you don't care about me. You only care about yourself, just trying to ease your own discomfort. Now that you know I'm not dead, there's no need for you to feel guilty anymore. Do what you should do, and stop focusing on me. After saying this, Jiang Yuan wanted to leave. Shen Xiang grabbed her hand. Jiang Yuan didn't move, casting an indifferent glance at him. It was precisely this kind of look that actually made Shen Xiang afraid. He instinctively loosened his grip and said in a low voice, what do you want? I can give you anything. Consider it compensation for our time as husband and wife. In truth, Shen Xiang had already given her more than enough back then, but in her haste to leave his side, she had staged a fake death, forcing her to donate most of the assets to charity. But since he had offered, Jiang Yuan gazed into his eyes and said softly, I want to find out who tried to murder me. Are you willing to help me with that too? Chapter 17. Shen Xiang was taken aback, not expecting her to bring this up so suddenly. I had my suspicions back then too, but after all the investigations, nothing unusual was found. And the person responsible for the accident was already sentenced. Jiang Yuan, that car accident back then was truly just an accident. Trying to investigate it now would be nothing but a waste of effort. Although Jiang Yuan had gone abroad, Fu Zhon had been keeping an eye on domestic affairs for her. That's how he knew Shen Xiang had looked into that car accident. This did come as a surprise to her, but it was merely a surprise, nothing more. Seeing her remain silent, Shen Xian's tone grew somewhat anxious. Let bygones be bygones, and start anew. Alright, what he really wanted to say was let's start over, but seeing the woman's unchanged expression, those words inexplicably stuck in his throat, making them hard to utter. Jiang Yuan had no idea about his many little schemes. With an expressionless face, she said, I know the culprit was sentenced, and I also know he behaved well, reducing his original 1-year sentence to 7 months. That is to say, he's about to be released. Otherwise, Jiang Yuan wouldn't have chosen to return to the country at this time. Shen Xiang frowned. You still suspect him? Of course not. Jiang Yuan let out a light laugh but said nothing more, her cool voice stating, Shen Xiang, though I no longer have feelings for you, I don't hate you either. I will definitely continue my investigation. If you're willing to help, that's great. If not, it's fine too. We'll go our separate ways. Neither owing the other anything. The phrase neither owing the other anything pierced Shen Xian's heart like a thorn. He clenched his fist tightly. I'll help you, whatever you want to investigate. I'll help you. After discussing these matters, there was nothing left to say. Jiang Yuan stepped out of the fire exit first, not even glancing at Xu Chenyang, and went straight to Fu Zhon, saying, let's hurry inside. The movie is about to start. Fu Zhon's eyes softened as he replied. All right. Their retreating figures looked perfectly matched, as if they were made for each other. Xu Chenyang watched them enter the cinema, nearly grinding his teeth to dust. Just in time after getting the movie tickets, Jiang Yuan and Fu Zhon followed the crowd into the screening hall. Even without looking, She could sense the person beside her glancing at her from time to time, hesitating as if on the verge of speaking, his curiosity practically written all over his face. Jiang Yuan found it somewhat amusing and sighed. Just ask whatever you want to know, Mr. Fu. What did he say to you? He said he didn't expect me to still be alive, and asked why I hadn't contacted him if I wasn't dead. What did you say to him? I told him it was over between us. And whether I'm dead or alive is none of his business. Fu Zhon fell silent for 2 seconds, a barely perceptible sigh escaping his lips. He gently poked the woman's cheek and said helplessly, "Speak properly. Don't keep that word on the tip of your tongue." Jiang Yuan replied innocently, "But that's really how we say it. Anything else?" Jiang Yuan didn't hide anything and told him that she had informed Shun Shiyang of her plan to investigate the car accident. Fu Zhon frowned, expressing his concern. "Aren't you afraid he might tell Xu Chenyang about this? Whether Xu Chenyang is involved or not, she's a major variable. I'm afraid he won't tell her." Jiang Yuan's expression was calm. "If it really is Xu Chenyang, she won't just sit back and do nothing once she knows we're investigating. She'll have to act, and that's when she'll slip up. Worried about not finding evidence, aren't you?" Fu Zhon turned to look at her profile, her delicate and enchanting features illuminated by the dim light. This was Jiang Yuan, seemingly indifferent to worldly affairs, but in reality, she never forgot a slight. Kindness or unkindness shown to her would always be repaid twofold. He curled his lips slightly and whispered, "All right, since Miss Jiang is so clever, I'll focus on supporting you from behind. You just fly, and I'll protect you." The pleasant voice was right by her ear, and Jiang Yuan's heart unexpectedly warmed. Chapter 18. Shun Shiyang somehow found out where Jiang Yuan lived and started sending her various gifts every day: flowers, handbags, pastries, and even lawyers showing up at her door, offering to transfer property to her name. At first, Jiang Yuan would politely decline. Later, I realized the more I talked, the more worked up this man became, so I simply let him be. But Fu Qingcheng was having a tough time. Although Sister Yuanyuan didn't work, she never missed her daily exercise or outings, leaving Fu Qingcheng as the only idle one. She felt like she was just there to receive and send packages. That day, Fu Zhon had just returned home when Fu Qingcheng happened to walk in with a large bouquet of Freud roses. "Just toss it on the ground casually. Bro, can't you do something about this? Did you see that? That guy Shen is way too brazen. He's pursuing your future wife and even came straight to our home. How can you be so indifferent? Are you really not bothered at all?" She was seriously about to lose her mind. Just a couple of days ago, these flowers still felt fresh to me. But day after day, who can stand the annoyance? Fu Zhon frowned, ignoring her provocation and complaints, and simply asked, "Where is she, Sister Yuanyuan?" Fu Qingcheng slumped listlessly onto the sofa. "She's upstairs. She just finished her workout and probably went to take a shower." Fu Zhon's brow twitched slightly as he stepped upstairs. Jiang Yuan's room was at the southernmost end, not the master bedroom. Yet its view and lighting were better than the master suite's. Fu Zhon knocked lightly on the door. Finding it unlocked, he pushed it open and entered. The sound of rushing water came from the bathroom. She was indeed showering. He stood in the middle of the room for a moment, hesitating between leaving and sitting down, ultimately choosing the latter. He casually picked up a book from the coffee table and began flipping through it. 1 page, 2 pages. The sound of water made his heartbeat grow increasingly rapid. Fu Shen took a deep breath, closed the book, and placed it back in its original spot. Just as he was about to leave, his phone on the bed suddenly rang. He turned and walked over. The name Shun Shiyang catching his eye, with a dark expression, Fu Zhon picked up the phone, sneering. "Connected. Jiang Yuan. Did you like the flowers today? Are you free tonight? I found a really good restaurant and wanted to take you there." Jiang Yuan isn't here." The cold voice instantly silenced the other end. Fu Zhon leaned casually against the edge of the bed, glancing toward the bathroom and remarked, "It seems Shun Corporation is doing quite well, Mr. Shun has so much free time every day and even money to send Yuan so many gifts, but our storage room is almost full. Mr. Shun can stop sending them." Shun Xiang asked in a deep voice. "Why is it you? Where's Jiang Yuan?" Yuan is taking a shower," Silence on the other end. Fu Zhon then asked, "Is there anything else you'd like me to relay, President Shen?" He hung up. Fu Zhon looked at the phone screen and let out a disdainful snort. Jiang Yuan came out and saw this rather childish gesture of his. Smiling, she asked, "Who called?" "Shen Shiyang," Fu Zhon replied, staring at the woman's face. Only when he saw no sign of anger did he continue, "I told him to stop sending things. Qing Cheng is annoyed by the daily deliveries." Jiang Yuan let out an "oh" and continued drying her hair nonchalantly. Fu Zhon put down his phone, took out a hairdryer from the cabinet, and helped her dry her hair. "Aren't you angry?" "Why should I be angry?" Jiang Yuan was puzzled. "I've said it before." He wouldn't listen. "If your words can make a difference, that would be the best outcome." Fu Zhon was taken aback for a moment, then smiled. After drying her hair, they finally got down to business. He told Jiang Yuan, "The driver who was behind the wheel back then has been released from prison. Let me know when you're available, and we'll go see him." Jiang Yuan turned her head abruptly. "The sooner, the better," she said. "Evening, okay." To avoid complications, Jiang Yuan didn't want to wait a single minute. All the leads pointed to that driver. If he was willing to tell the truth, the mastermind behind the scenes wouldn't be able to hide. Chapter 19. By the time Jiang Yuan and Fu Zhon arrived at the abandoned car yard, the sky had completely darkened. A faint light glowed behind the iron gate, eerie and desolate. Exchanging a glance, Fu Zhon stepped forward to knock. The first sound to break the silence was the barking of a dog. Jiang Yuan nervously clenched her hands, only to have them immediately enveloped by the man who stepped back to her side. "Don't be afraid, I'm here," he reassured her. She softly murmured an acknowledgement and waited for movement from within. Before long, the sound of uneven footsteps approached, growing louder as they neared. The middle-aged man wasn't particularly tall, dressed entirely in black. When he opened the door and saw the two people outside, he instinctively froze for a moment. Just as he was about to close the door, Jiang Yuan swiftly stopped him. "Zhong Hao, I know you gave false testimony. I already have enough evidence to prove you committed murder. If you don't cooperate with us today, I'll hand all the evidence over to the police immediately. You know you can't escape. In this day and age, trying to be a fugitive is as difficult as climbing to the heavens." Zhong Hao became immediately agitated upon hearing her say that. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know you people. Get out of here now." Jiang Yuan stared at him intently and said urgently, "I know you're being forced into this too. I can help you. You can tell me what you want. Do you really plan to live the rest of your life under someone else's coercion like this?" Perhaps it was the last sentence that struck a chord with Zhong Hao, as his expression wavered momentarily. At that very moment, Fu Zhon reached out and pushed open the iron door. Stepping inside, "Talk." Zhong Hao looked at the tall man before him, seemingly with no other choice. Jiang Yuan and Fu Zhon worked in perfect sync, one playing the good cop, the other the bad cop. Through a mix of threats and incentives, they soon pried open Zhong Hao's mouth. "That woman promised me $1 million, saying with my status, everyone would think it was just an ordinary car accident. Who knew she only gave me 500,000? I spent 7 months in jail, and when I got out, she refused to acknowledge the deal, kept delaying, really thinks I'm a fool." As Zhong Hao grew increasingly agitated, Jiang Yuan's fingers trembled slightly. She opened Weibo, found Xu Qinyan's photo, and held it out to him, her voice hoarse. "Was it her?" "Yes, that's her." Zhong Hao's eyes flashed with anger, but when he turned and met Fu Zhon's icy gaze, he immediately shrank back. "I've already told you everything I know. There's no use coming after me. Even if I don't do it, she'll find someone else to do it. The point is, you're going to get hit." Xu Chenyang didn't necessarily want Jiang Yuan dead. What she'd said at the time was that crippling her would also suffice. Fu Zhon crossed his hands, his long fingers lightly tapping to a rhythm. His unhurried voice carried an overwhelming sense of pressure. "I'll give you 2 million to step forward and testify against Xu Chenyang. I want her behind bars, but I can transfer the money to you immediately. If you're worried, we can sign a contract and have it notarized by a lawyer. I'm a businessman, and businessmen value integrity above all." Chen Hao opened his mouth, clearly hesitating. Jiang Yuan's emotions also softened as she said, "I just want to bring those who harmed me to justice. Every grievance has its cause, and every debt has its debtor. I won't target you, but I do hope you can help me." Chen Hao looked at the two people before him and finally nodded in agreement. After leaving the abandoned parking lot, Jiang Yuan remarked, "Xu Chenyang might not have intended to break her promise. She probably just didn't expect that after my death, Shun Xiang wouldn't be willing to marry her immediately, so she couldn't produce that much cash for the time being." Fu Zhon gave her an approving look. "Smart. So what do we do now? Confront her directly?" "No need." Fu Zhon leisurely took out a voice recorder from his pocket. "This is enough. Let the police handle the rest. You don't have to deal with such a despicable person anymore." Chapter 20. With the evidence in hand. Xu Chenyang was quickly arrested. This outcome was completely beyond Shun Xian's expectations. Liu Wei recounted the entire situation to him. "Miss Xu's final request was to see you. The police might contact you for questioning as well." Almost as soon as he finished speaking, the office phone rang. Shun Xiang seemed momentarily dazed, taking a deep breath before answering. "Hello, Mr. Shun. There's a case that requires your cooperation in the investigation. Please come over to give a statement." At 4 in the afternoon, Shun Xiang appeared at the Municipal Public Security Bureau. After carefully questioning the details of the incident, the police officer asked, "Miss Xu would like to see you. What do you think?" If he was unwilling, he could refuse. Shun Xian's eyes were as deep as the ocean as he said in a low voice, "Make the arrangements." He also wanted to hear what that woman was really thinking. Soon, Xu Chenyang was brought out. Though only a day had passed, she seemed to have lost all her vitality, looking utterly haggard. Upon seeing Shun Xiang, she cried out excitedly, "Yang, I'm innocent. Go and tell them. Tell them I didn't do anything. It was her own fault for not paying attention while driving. Why should I take the blame for this? Besides, she didn't die, did she?" Shun Xiang frowned deeply, listening silently to her outburst. Xu Chenyan's emotions gradually calmed down. Her eyes were red, and tears streamed down her cheeks. "Yang, you really don't care about me at all, do you? You're the one who ruined all the affection between us. The evidence is irrefutable, and no matter how Xu Chenyang tries to argue, she will face imprisonment." Shun Xiang looked at her calmly and said, "Chenyang, I really liked you back then. Then, what about now?" Sorry, he couldn't deceive his own heart, just as he couldn't control its pounding when seeing Jiang Yuan again. The disappearance and emergence of emotions have never followed any logic. Xu Chenyang sneered, "You've fallen for Jiang Yuan, but what's the use? Do you think she'd ever reconcile with you? Let me tell you, Jiang Yuan being with you was just a game from the start. She never liked you, not one bit. You'd never guess." Jiang Yuan and Fu Zhon made a bet. The wager was whether you could truly forget me. "Yang, do you think you're any different from me? We're just their playthings." This was what Xu Chenyang overheard during a phone call between Fu Zhon and Jiang Yuan. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given up on Fu Zhon so easily and returned to the country to find Shun Xiang. That man, from start to finish, the only one he ever loved was Jiang Yuan. He was just too proud to open his mouth. So he pretended to accept her, wanting to provoke Jiang Yuan, who would have thought Jiang Yuan wouldn't take the bait, and even agreed to his pursuit of Shun Xiang. Everything that had happened up to now was nothing but a joke. Shun Xiang didn't know how he walked out of the detention center. The sun was shining brightly outside, yet he couldn't feel a trace of warmth. Could it all have been a lie, as he recalled everything that had happened over the past 5 years? A self-mocking smile grew stronger on his face. Fine, consider it his retribution. Let it be. He didn't cherish her properly and deserves the consequences. Jiang Yuan was unaware of all this. After giving her statement at the police station and returning to the villa, she discovered that Fu Qingcheng had completely redecorated the place from top to bottom, giving it the vibe of a villa party. Fu Qingcheng had initially wanted to invite some friends but was worried Jiang Yuan might not like it, so he decided to wait for her return to ask for her opinion. "Of course I have no objections. You can do whatever you want," she said. "Really?" Fu Qingcheng's eyes lit up. "I'll go make the call right now." She bounced upstairs just as Fu Zhon was coming out of the study. Their eyes met in the living room, and both of them burst into laughter. All settled. Yes, all done. Jiang Yuan hadn't felt this relaxed in a long time. After a moment's thought, she said, "Next, whether we return to the States or stay in the country, I can follow your arrangements." After all, she was already employed at Fu Zhon's company, and Fu Zhon was her direct superior. However, the man didn't answer immediately but walked over unhurriedly. "Is this suddenly about work?" "Yeah, what if I don't want to talk about work?" Fu Zhon's deep eyes gazed at her with an indescribable tenderness. He spoke slowly and deliberately, "Jiang Yuan, I don't want to discuss work with you, I only want to talk about feelings. Would you like to?" Jiang Yuan froze for a moment. Then a faint smile bloomed at the corners of her lips. "Well, President Fu, you'll have to try harder then." Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so feel free to share your opinions. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories. We'll see you in the next video.